then your foundation at the base, where you're working hard in the middle to build the best version of yourself, and when you're at the top, trying to maintain the top. I want to ask us all, where do we think the hardest part is? Where do we think the hardest part of the mountain is, of our life? Building our foundation at the base, in the ridge in the middle, when we're working hard to become the best version of ourselves and to get to our peak, or maintaining our tip-top version and staying at the peak. I'd like to ask Auntie Dinka, she can come forth and try and answer my question as best as she can. Everyone clap for her. She's looking lovely today. Wow. I had to close my eyes when I saw it. I didn't want to be distracted when I was preaching. Looking lovely.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Good afternoon, church. I believe maintaining where you are at the peak is the hardest, because you have to, for you not to go down where you have reached, it takes more work than from the foundation and getting there. To stay there, it takes, I believe that's the hardest.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your answer. Everyone clap for her. If she says the peak, that maintaining peak and staying at your peak is the hardest part. I'd like to ask you if I can get my friend Emmanuel to come up and try and answer the question. Everyone clap for him. Where's the mic? So where do you think the hardest part of life is?
I think the hardest part is at the top.
At the top, okay? At the peak. Why do you think this is?
Because it rains, it pours, and it blows as well.
Yeah.
You know? At the top, you need to have a strong root. If you have a strong root, you just fall over.
Yeah. So Emmanuel as well. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Thank you very much. Everyone clap for Emmanuel. Yeah, he said the peak as well. Now I'd like to ask one of my uncles if Uncle Abraham, Father Abraham, can come forward and answer this question as well. Father Abraham with many sons. I'd like to ask him to answer the question. Thank you, son. You can do that one.
Thank you. I agree with the two speakers. So it can be difficult to get to the peak, but to handle that top, very, very difficult, in the sense that there's a lot of responsibilities and there's a lot of waves, and you'll be biting you, kicking you here and there. For you to maintain, it takes grace of God.
Okay, thank you. So everyone clap for our speakers today. Clap for them. So it seems that everyone went for the same kind of answer. They believe that the peak is the hardest place to attain. But I want to tell us now that the answer is not that straightforward. And before I answer the question, and go through the answer that I've come to, I'd like to tell us a story first. This one is mainly to talk about the base and the foundation. There are two fathers. It's like a story that I read online one time, because I was looking at different forms of business, I was looking at different books, trying to read and trying to get into more knowledge. And there were two fathers. One father loved gambling and betting. However, he was very lucky. He amassed a lot of wealth through gambling and betting. He ended up with so much wealth. Then the other father was a worker his entire life. And at the age of 70, he was nearing to death. At the age of 70, he gained so much information and so much wisdom on how to build wealth. And then he got enough wealth, not much, but just enough wealth to keep him by. Now both these fathers, they were nearing the end of their life. They were nearing death. Both of them have one son. Then they called the sons to their deathbed and they told them what they're going to give the son. The father who loved gambling and betting, but amassed so much wealth, gave his son $100 million. $100 million and all his wealth, all his property, $100 million. While the other father didn't have much, but he still had enough. He gave his son $100,000. His son $100,000, and he told him everything he learned in the final years of his life. All the wisdom he gained and all the information he learned. Now I'd like to ask us, who do you think gave the son a better foundation? Who do we think gave the son a better foundation? I'd like to call Dick and Beckley, trying to answer that question. After these two fathers that I've just mentioned, were from their deathbed, giving their son one thing?
My understanding of the scripture is that knowledge is being passed down. The second father has the knowledge, the understanding, and he still had a little bit of wealth, which he passed on to the son. The son can use that money to start a business, but give him the knowledge and how to make things multiply the money that is given to him, which is the best advice you can give to his son.
Yes. Thank you for the answer, everyone clap for him. We believe that the second father, who gave his son 100,000, but also wisdom and information, was the best father in this case. I'd like to call my beautiful auntie, Sister Kemi Dada. If she will step up and try to answer which father gave the most knowledge or the best thing to their son. Wow, 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 look at her coming forward. The auntie in pink, you're looking lovely.
I think the father that gave the wisdom, the knowledge, because that is like the foundation for the child. And the child can build up on that to get a better future, rather than actually physical money, because that would be wasted.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So they both answered the same question. They both answered it the same way as well. And I'll tell you the rest of the story, how it goes. The son who gained the knowledge, he worked hard using the 100,000 that he had, put some of it in a high interest saving account, then also put a percentage of it into trading and other things and other methods of trying to increase his income. The other son with the 100 million, he took after his father. He started gambling. He started betting. But he was not as lucky as the father. He lost over 70 million within 10 years. While the other son of the other father gained 10 million in 7 years. Now I want to talk to you first. This is the foundation, this is the base of both of them. The son who had 100 million with no knowledge didn't have a strong base at all. The base must seem strong to everyone outside, but wasn't strong at all. The other son, who only had 100,000, had a base that was more strong and more set in stone. And then by how strong your base is, it can help your ridge, the middle part, and how easy it is to build up. So to answer that question, it will depend on many factors. That is the answer to the question. One of the two factors actually. The first factor being how strong your base is. If your base is very strong, then the building part won't be too hard. It will be relatively easy. So that means it should be easier than the peak. And in that person's life, the peak is the hardest part of their life. However, if someone's base is weak, not strong at all, then the building up part, the part in the middle where they have to build their life, where they have to try and get to their peak, is going to be very hard. It's going to be very difficult. And it could be even more difficult than the peak. The second factor that makes the question dependent is how high your peak is, where your peak is. Someone who amassed 200,000, they're still rich. But it's easier for them to go broke than for someone who amassed billions. Because someone like Bill Gates, for example, let's say he loses $1 billion in a year, he's still a billionaire. But someone who loses all their wealth, 200K, they've lost that money. So depending on how high your peak is, the peak could be the hardest part of your life, or could be the ridge as well. There's different bases to everyone's life. There's different ways that we can work to maintain the base, then maintain the middle part, then maintain the peak that we want to get at. And another thing that I want to tell us all is that timing is different. You will be shocked to know that the oldest mountain in the world, no one will be able to guess how old it is. 3.2 billion years. The oldest mountain in the world is 3.2 billion years old. And Mount Everest, everyone knows it as the tallest mountain in the world. It's 60 million years old. So when you look at the difference in years, when Mount Everest was growing and growing and growing, do you think that would have been worried about the tallest mountain and the oldest mountain in the world that is higher than it currently? And then it kept growing. The other mountain was still higher than Mount Everest. Until Mount Everest got to a point that got much, much, much higher than that oldest mountain. The point of this analogy is, don't look at others, don't look at where they are now. Their peak is different from your peak. Everyone runs on a different time. Psychology shows this. When they put two people in different testing rooms with no clocks, no times, no nothing, no phones, no clocks, they put them in a cave, two separate people in a cave. When they came out of the cave, they asked them what month, what year, and what time it is. The months they gave was 6 months apart. So both of them were living life differently. Both of them were counting days differently. This shows that different times are for different people. Now in school last week, I was having this debate amongst my friends. This question is a question that, we were just talking about. I had my view and others had their view on it. There's two ways you can ask this question, but I'll ask it this one way. Amongst your close friends in a room, you're in a room amongst your closest friends alive, would you rather now be the poorest person in this room, while all your friends are rich, and you can't leave this room, you're all in this room, or would you rather be the richest person in this room, while all your friends are poor? Temidai, I'd like for you to ask us that question first. Everyone clap for Mr. Temidai. Would you rather now, in the room with your closest friends, be the richest or the poorest in the room? And why?
Hello? Yeah. So I understand the point of the question, but if we are being real, I'd rather be the richest person.
Fair enough.
I love my friends, but again, it's like my life, so I want to be the rich one.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. You put the mic down. Thank you very much, Dan. Let me see. Okay, let me ask one more person as well. Let me just scout the room. All these beautiful faces. This is Bemi Dicey here. And I'll call her up to answer this question as well. Which one would you rather be?
Praise the Lord. I'd rather be the richest as well. Because as Temidai said, it's my life. And with that as well, I can impact the life of others, bringing them up as well, not being selfish.
Okay.
So I'd rather help them.
Okay, and I have a question for you before you go. You have 50,000, yeah? Would you rather have 50,000 in a room full of people with 20,000, or 50,000 in a room full of people with 100,000?
There is love in sharing.
Just which one would you rather be in? 50,000 for 100,000 or 50,000 for 20,000?
Anyone that comes my way, I'll share with them. Let me sit on the fence like that. But there is love in sharing.
Okay.
And you can show God in sharing as well.
Okay. And I'd like to ask them that question as well. In a room, you have 50,000. You rather be with 50,000 and everyone else has 20,000. Or you have 50,000 and everyone else has 100,000.
In a room with people with 100,000, I think.
Thank you. So that's just going against your point. Thank you very much. When you have 50,000 and everyone else has 100,000, you have to the poorest in the room. And the way I changed the way I worded that question is this. When we're the poorest in the room, firstly, that's why I worded the question that I said your closest friends. Not only can they give you money, they can give you knowledge and they can give you connections. And with these connections, I watched the movie based on real life. A guy had a friend who was very rich and had a lot of rich friends as well. He then introduced his friend who was poorer than him to all his rich friends. Then this friend that was poorer than him got closer to the rich friends than the rich guy himself. And since he got closer to them, they brought him into their inner circle. And he then, at the end of the day, got richer than the friend who introduced him. Secondly, being the richest in that room, you're not gaining any money. Yes, you are giving wealth. But if you're giving wealth and giving knowledge all this time, from that 50,000, from that millions that you have, or keep dropping and keep dropping and keep dropping because you keep having to feed people around you. But if you're the poorest and you're learning from others, and you keep learning and you keep learning, and then you get the connections, you get the money from your friends, you'll gain from being maybe having 5,000 to having 100,000 at the end of the year, while the richest room will stay at that 50,000 throughout the whole year, not growing, not learning anything. Knowledge and wisdom is something we should look for over wealth. I understand why both of them answered being the richest, because we care about our status, we care about how we're viewed. Amongst our friends, we don't want to be seen as the poorest, we don't want to be seen like we're a burden to them. But that's why I called it your close friends and not just your friends. Your close friends will see you as someone they can help out, as someone they can try to help out. Other people, they could laugh at you for being poor. They could kick you. They could mock you. But when there's someone in your close circle, someone like a family member, it's not the same thing. I'd now like to take it to the biblical part of it. In a story, we've all been in primary school, we've all been in school. You know there's different parts of a story. But what makes a good plot of a story? We have the beginning, then we have the, at the beginning, then it moves to the problem. There's then a problem. It rises, but then there's a problem. Then at the top, there's the climax. Now after the climax, there's the deflation, where the story starts to calm down again. And then at the end, there's the resolution. So it goes from the beginning, to the problem, to the climax, to the deflation, and then to the end. Life is just a continuous cycle of this whole thing. We start as the beginning, then there's a problem in life that we have. Everyone has a problem. We have a problem in life. Then it gets to the point of that problem that we're really struggling and we're trying to solve it. Then the problem starts to deflate in our life, then we find a resolution for it. And once we find that resolution, let's say there's a new year now, we want to have a new beginning, and that cycle continues. Now before I name this person in the Bible, I'd like to ask anyone, who do you think this person will be? I'll just give you some clues now. So their beginning was sweet. They were very loved. They were loved more than those around them. And because they were loved more than those around them, problem arose. A big problem arose for them, this individual. But then this problem that arose for this individual actually led this individual to a better tomorrow. Their climax was sweet. And then in the end, in their resolution, they became like a king. They started feasting with kings. Who do you think this individual is? Wow, everyone got it first time. It seems everyone stays in Bible study and everyone really listens in Bible school. It was Joseph. I'd like to take us to Genesis. If we can go to Genesis 37, verse 3 to verse 8. I want to talk about Joseph, how Joseph's life developed. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. Next verse. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Next verse. And Joseph dreamed the dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. So this is the beginning of Joseph's life. This is him building his foundation. His foundation was built since he was a kid, because he had a gift. He had a gift, and he knew of his gift. And he loved to use his gift. But this gift that he has is now put him into the part of life where he has a problem, because everyone else around him is envious of him. Next verse. Next verse, please. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaf stood round about me, and made obeisance to my sheaf. So he's telling the dreams of how his brothers were kind of worshipping him, and how they were working around him. Then we know what happens next. The brothers get very, very jealous, and they get very angry about this dream. They become envious of their brother, and this is where the problem begins for Joseph. How many of us, through telling others our success, through trying to brag, or through trying to give others wisdom, have put ourselves in trouble, have put ourselves in the deep pit that we're now trying to get out of? Now it's the conflict of Joseph. Now I want you to move to verse 19. Now a problem with some people when they're in the conflict and they have a problem, they get a permanent solution for a part-time problem. A permanent solution for a part-time problem. For example, this person's skin was peeling off and it started getting lighter and lighter, and they wanted to know what to do about it. So they went to a friend of theirs and got a tan, and then UV rays kept hitting their body. And they got this tan, fake tan. So they're in the sunbed, and then UV rays would be hitting their body. All this fake tan, their skin was back to normal. But by the time they started getting sick, months later, they went to the doctor. And then the doctor told them that they retrieved cancer because of how long they exposed themselves to these bad rays. This is a permanent solution to a part-time problem. When we have a part-time problem, we have to sit through all the solutions. We have to think which one is best for our current situation. And they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh. Next verse. So the brothers now plotting against Joseph. They want to know what to do to him because of their jealousy and their wrath. Come now therefore and let us slay him and cast him into some pit. And we will say some evil beast have devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. Next verse please. So this is now the problem of Joseph. And Reuben heard it, and delivered them out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. Now, the thing many people don't know about the conflict and the problems of our lives is that God will help us to make sure this is not the end of us. A lot of us have problems. Everyone has problems in the world. Some people's problems will be the end of them. Back to talking about mountains. Some mountains will get to that point where they're building and they'll stop there because it's getting too hard, because it's getting too tough, because they don't know what to do next. They'll start thinking, and because it gets too tough for them, they stop growing. So many people haven't reached potential because of this, because it's too hard during the building process. Now, onto Joseph's climax, onto the height of his life. Genesis 39, verse 1 to 6. Genesis 39. So now we'll see how Joseph's life continued to build. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down hither. Next verse, please. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. So Joseph lived with a master, and he was living there and living there and living there. Next verse. We'll see how lucky Joseph was. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hands. God blessed Joseph, blessed him much more than the other servants in the master's house. And this then helped Joseph to improve and increase his vision so that he can work harder to get to his peak. Now I want to get everyone to the resolution, the part that everyone knows. I believe we all know this part of Joseph's life. Genesis 41, verse 41. This is the part we all see. When we look on social media, this is why social media has killed the current world we're in. What we see on social media is the peak of people's lives, their enjoyment, how they're enjoying their life, how they're enjoying their riches. We don't see the hard work beneath. We don't see the base. We don't see the part they're building up. We don't see the ugliness of the hard work. We just see the beauty of the peak. We don't see the beauty of the riches. And then we start to envy these things. We start to want these things, and we're no longer content. I know everyone knows this part of the story, because this is where Joseph reached his resolution and his peak. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. Next verse, please. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. Next verse, please. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, bowed the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. Look at the resolution and look at the peak of Joseph. He had many struggles, more struggles. But I don't want to talk about his struggles. There was when he was in a prison. There was when the wife claimed that he touched her when he didn't. But we have Mama Aloni here with us. So I don't want to waste too much of our time. Because I know as soon as she comes, we could be here till 10 p.m. Who knows? So next verse now. Joseph is at his peak. Next verse, please. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. His peak was beautiful, but his climax and his problems, that's not what people focus on. How hard it took him to work. I know if I show a lot of the uncles and aunties a movie, especially like my mum here, when we're watching a movie, she'll be on her phone, she won't be focusing. But as soon as it gets to the climax, she's looking, she's watching, there's action, there's things going on. They're trying to get out of a problem, they're trying to get out of a situation that they're in. This is the part that everyone wants to see, where everyone is getting out of the problem, where they're finally making it, or when they get to the top. A famous saying is, when you're doing bad, no one is there for you, no one is around. As soon as you do well, you look up, and there's 1,000 people clapping for you. Everyone will start claiming you. Anthony Joshua, when he was much younger, he went to prison. He went to prison and he talked about how everyone was laughing at him as an African, as a Nigerian. They were mocking him saying, oh, it's those Nigerian boys, that's just how they are. Now that he's a famous world boxer, they don't call him Nigerian anymore. They call him the pride of England. They call him the pride of the UK, because he's done something that they love and he's done something that they cherish. The note that I want to leave us all on here today is that in life, the main place that we're probably at, all of us here, we're probably at the place where we want to build our life up. We want to get better, where we want to reach our peak. But our peak doesn't mean that you have masses of wealth. Our peak doesn't mean that you're the richest man alive. Our peak means you've reached the best version of yourself. Our peak means you've seen yourself, that you've fully reached your potential. and you fully achieved your purpose on this life. Because God doesn't just bring us here to go back to heaven. God brings us here for a reason and a purpose. And once we work on our base and keep working and building ourselves up, we can reach the best version of ourselves and reach the peak in the end of the day. Thank you. Father, in the mighty name of Jesus. Father, Lord, I thank you for the word of today.